He had been briefed. He was facing the worst economic crisis in decades.
Fragile financial system likely to get worse before it gets better.
Larry Summers said we're going to lose millions more jobs, and we could have a second Great Depression.
Secretary of the Treasury
Tim Geithner said the financial system is locked up and it might collapse.
The U.S. banking system remains in deep trouble.
We were hanging on the edge of a cliff, and in fact, we were starting down into the abyss.
This is a stunningly scary moment.
CBG, 440, 450 on 800 going on the bell.
There was plenty of panic to go around.
The troubled economy offering a harsh greeting to the new president. Worst showing ever on an inaugural day.
It's tough to stay positive when you've been kind of getting clubbed to death.
Markets were collapsing.
It's 900 now, 900.
Major banks were failing.
I'm definitely going to pull my money out.
More than 100,000 Americans were losing their homes every week.
We're doing a serve an eviction on you. You have to take off in about 15 minutes.
And the worst effect, soaring unemployment.
In 2008, nearly 1.2 million jobs have disappeared.
And still climbing.
We need jobs.
People are scared. It was really getting worse, and we had already, as a country, done just a massive amount of things.
Where do you start? You know, which one of these piles of things that you want to start with?
We had this big debate about what to do.
It's your first day on the job and the world economy is collapsing. Did you ever think to yourself, this is going to derail the country, my plans, my presidency?
Maybe because I was too new to panic. I was very confident that we could get to the right answer.
Obama decides to go big. A stimulus bill that would pump $800 billion into the economy. Tax cuts, money to save the jobs of cops and teachers, and the rebuilding of roads and bridges.
At this particular moment, only government can provide the short-term boost necessary to lift us from a recession this deep and severe.
Republicans hated it. They said it was too rushed and hopelessly complex.
I don't know how you could read 1,100 pages between midnight and now. Not one member's read this. What happened to the promise that we're going to let the American people see what's in this bill for 48 hours? But nope, we don't have time to do that.
The decisions that he was making to save the economy were all politically toxic. He had no illusions about that.
Still, Obama thought he could pry loose some Republican votes. Instead of the usual step of inviting them to the White House, he went to Capitol Hill.
It was a very dramatic gesture on the part of the president, as you know, Diana, to reach
to talk to Republicans on their turf.
Hello, everybody.
It did not go well.
I could not find anybody who said, at least in the House, that they would vote yes tomorrow.
We had a wonderful exchange of ideas.
Not so much, as it turned out. The Republicans had made up their minds before Obama even arrived.
On my trip up to the Hill, they released an email saying we're going to be voting against it before they'd even heard our presentation.
The stimulus passed without a single vote from a House Republican.
They were making political decisions, and we were trying to save the country from a disaster.
This was, in fact, a crucial moment in the history of the Obama presidency. It was only the president's second month in office. The financial crisis was about to get even scarier, and yet it was already clear. Republicans would hold firm to the vow they made as he entered the White House.
Mitch McConnell says what his strategy is. They told you the strategy. It's not like you have to interpret it. They're overt about it.
Their desire to stop him was also going to have devastating consequences for the American people. And why? Or was it some of it race? Or was it the politics? Was it power?
But Obama was not blameless. Republicans say he would not accept any of their ideas.
No engagement in any way, shape, or form.
They found him unappealing. in many ways.
The Republicans had a favorite word to describe the president and his policies.
Really arrogant, if you will.
Arrogant. I do think Barack Obama is arrogant.
But now Obama had to go it alone, and he was facing a new crisis.
More troubles for GM and its workers.
America's iconic car company, General Motors, was in a death spiral.
With General Motors right now, I think we're all afraid.
They were talking about 2 weeks and bust. It was not 2 years. It was not, we have a problem here. We think we can keep it alive for 2 weeks.
Chrysler was collapsing as well.
Everybody's here for one common cause. We want to keep our jobs.
There were layoffs, plant closings.
It's time to get pissed off!
We cannot and must not, and we will not, let our auto industry simply vanish.
Polls showed almost 2/3 of the American people opposed bailing out the car companies. Mitt Romney, whose father ran a car company, wrote an op-ed, "Let them go bankrupt." But Barack Obama decided to go all in.
Our government will be making a significant additional investment of about $30 billion in GM.
The massive loan effectively made the U.S. government the owner of General Motors.
We own a car company.
It's very scary.
Lenin and Stalin would love this stuff.
But even the auto bailout did not spark as much rage as bank bonuses.
Multi-million-dollar bonuses despite getting billions of your taxpayer bailout dollars.
That's the CEO where money went.
That's right, millions in bonuses were being paid to the very same bankers who many thought had almost destroyed the world economy.
It makes me feel disgusted. It makes me angry, certainly. If you're a CEO of a company like that, you shouldn't be able to drive a limo. You should ride your on the subway like everybody else does.
The anger came from all directions.
What happened with these bonuses was a mugging on Wall Street.
Those bonuses were contractual obligations, but the administration understood that the optics were awful.
I did not run for office to be helping out a bunch of fat cat bankers on Wall Street.
It looked like you were giving money to the arsonist, and they were going to profit while the country burned.
Then, American anger over all of it seemed to find a voice.
The government is promoting bad behavior.
On the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, a CNBC reporter named Rick Santelli went on an epic rant about bailouts.
This is America. How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage that has an extra bathroom and can't pay their bills? Raise their hand. How about we all? President Obama, are you listening? We're thinking of having a Chicago Tea Party in July. All you capitalists that want to show up to Lake Michigan, I'm going to start organizing.
What are you jumping in this time?
Mayor Daley is marshaling the police right now.
Rabble route.
National Guard.
It was the moment the Tea Party movement was born. In the end, the banks were stabilized and credit began flowing to Main Street. The taxpayers got all their money back with interest from those bets.
We saved the country from a failing financial system, but we lost the country. We lost the country doing it.
And they lost big. Even though Obama's emergency rescue succeeded, the appearance that he was helping Wall Street rather than ordinary Americans, that would prove very expensive. It cost him mountains of his political capital just when he needed it. He was headed into a gathering storm that would threaten the one thing he wanted most.
Can you hear us now?
That story later in the program. But first, how the president who brought down bin Laden let the next big terror threat rise up and take over lands Americans had died for.
Let me ask you if it's possible in your position to be completely honest and say the rise of the Islamic State surprised you.
The ISIS story next.
That would be nice, really nice, and I'm waiting to see it or hear it, okay, my good
Closed
people?
captioning brought to you by Invent.
Yep.
Human error in last month's crash of a Colombian airliner. The plane ran out of gas. The full tank range of the aircraft was less than the distance between Santa Cruz, Bolivia, and the destination. On top of that, air traffic controllers put the flight in a holding pattern after another flight reported a fuel leak. 71 people died in the November crash, including most members of a Brazilian soccer team. Well, an autopsy was performed Monday on a 10-year-old girl who died after suffering a medical emergency on an Air Canada flight on Christmas Eve. The plane was en route from Toronto to London when it diverted to Ireland's Shannon Airport. Local doctors pronounced the girl dead after the plane landed. The girl's nationality has not been released.
Oh my God.
And family and friends have identified a Toronto couple and their 2 young sons as the victims of a fire in southeastern Ontario on Christmas Eve. Jeff Tabor, his wife Jackie Gardner, and their 13 and 15-year-old sons are believed to have died in the fire. Tabor and Gardner were both lawyers in Toronto. Tabor's law firm confirmed the news on their website, saying he was a generous, vibrant, and wonderful person. The fire broke out early on Christmas Eve in a large cottage near Peterborough, Ontario. Police said 4 bodies were pulled from the rubble, but have not confirmed the identities.
Oh my God.
And U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, less than a month away from taking office, he still needs to fill his cabinet, but he's already trying to put out potential fires on domestic and international fronts, most notably Israel. Both Trump and that country's leader slamming the United Nations for demanding a stop to Israel's expansion of settlements. NBC's Haley Jackson reports.
Tonight, new fallout after a flashpoint in U.S.-Israeli relations. A United Nations Security Council resolution reprimanding Israel for West Bank settlements, seen as a slap to Israel, one the U.S. chose not to block with its veto. Israel furious, now accusing the U.S. of orchestrating the resolution itself.
We have proof. I don't believe it. We know it, and we'll share it with the incoming administration through the appropriate channels.
The Israeli ambassador echoing the allegations of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
As I told John Kerry on Thursday, friends don't take friends to the Security Council.
But it's Egypt who pushed the resolution. Senior White House aide Ben Rhodes insisting Friday, we did not draft or introduce this resolution. Do you not trust the U.S. government when they deny having anything to do with this?
Well, Ben Rhodes is an expert in fiction.
Donald Trump, far from staying out of the fight, tweeting this weekend, quote, the big loss for Israel and the United Nations will make it much harder to negotiate peace. And late today, slamming the UN as just a club for people to get together, talk, and have a good time. So sad. The escalating tension underscoring Netanyahu's chilly relationship with President Obama and his warm one with President-elect Trump, previewing potential changes in this diplomatic alliance and a break, in some ways, with decades of U.S. policy.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
Mr. Trump seems to be a different kind of a president. Will he want to really play the role of a responsible president once he's in office, or does he want to keep shaking things up?
The president-elect's taking exception to new comments from President Obama, who said in a podcast if he ran again and articulated his vision for a diverse, tolerant nation, he'd win over a majority of Americans. Donald Trump tweeting today that's not the case, citing ISIS, jobs leaving, and the healthcare law.
That was NBC's Haley Jackson reporting, and a memorial is growing outside the home of music icon George Michael. His death on Sunday shocked the world. Lots of questions about what caused it. ABC's Elizabeth Herr now with more on the singer's life and legacy.
Yes, I gotta have pop superstar George Michael, whose iconic voice was behind this holiday classic. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. In a career that lasted more than 3 decades, Michael scored hit after hit. Michael died of heart failure Sunday. His publicist telling ABC News Michael passed away peacefully at home over the Christmas period, but offering no further details. Police saying his death was unexplained, but not suspicious.
The reason they're saying it's unexplained and doing an autopsy is because I don't think they know.
An autopsy is pending while his fans and friends pay tribute to a man who shot to fame in the 80s. As one half of the group Wham with Andrew Ridgeley, then achieving even greater success as a solo artist. Coming out as gay in the 90s, his public victories and struggles also included arrests for lewd behavior and drug possession. But his powerful voice captivated millions of fans, selling more than 100 million records.
Well, what is it about me that women seem to ignore the fact that I'm gay? I think women really get the feeling that I understand them. And I write from the heart.
This morning, the music world is celebrating a pop legend.
He was on the money. She made such a tremendous contribution musically. It's a huge loss.
The celebrity tributes to Michael are still coming in. Ellen DeGeneres is calling her friend a brilliant talent, and Madonna posted online, "Farewell, my friend. Another great artist leaves us."
Anti-Shiite. Meanwhile, another crucial decision faced the president: how to handle the growing crisis in neighboring Syria, where jihadis were showing up to battle the regime of Bashar al-Assad.
We had reports coming from Iraq that some of the fighters in al-Qaeda in Iraq had moved to Syria.
Robert Ford, then the U.S. ambassador to Syria, witnessed the turmoil firsthand.
2 car bombings blamed on suicide attacks.
Al-Qaeda in Iraq,
The remains of the dead were scattered, and
the group that morphed into ISIS,
wounded were carried away in blankets.
was suspected of masterminding a car bombing of Syria's state security offices.
One car goes in, blows up to take down the outer defense, and then a second car goes in to detonate.
The criminal attack carries the blueprints of Al-Qaeda.
This is a hallmark tactic of al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Back in Washington, Ambassador Ford met with David Petraeus, who was then the head of the CIA. The extremists in Syria were getting stronger, he said, while the moderate rebels fighting Assad were getting weaker.
If you do nothing, the extremists will continue to gain ground. That's what our Syrian contacts were telling us. This isn't rocket science.
Petraeus urged the White House to arm the moderates.
Recommendations were made to assist some of the opposition elements, and that obviously a decision was not forthcoming to do that for quite a very long time.
The president was skeptical. He saw the Syrian civil war as a quagmire in which the moderates were too few, too weak, and too disorganized to prevail.
I think this notion that somehow there was this ready-made moderate Syrian force that was able to defeat Assad is simply not true.
Jay tells me that you guys have been missing me.
Then in August 2012, at a routine press conference,
Update us on your latest thinking on where you think things are in Syria.
Obama appeared suddenly willing to use force against Assad.
A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus.
That red line was crossed 1 year later. A horrific sarin gas attack in a Damascus suburb left hundreds dead, including many children. The president ordered the military to get ready for a strike. An attack was imminent.
The drums of war growing louder.
The U.S. will punish Syria.
The Obama administration
says there must be a response.
But the president who wanted to end America's wars in the Middle East was having second thoughts about starting a new one.
Okay.
He proposed what some saw as a delaying tactic: seek permission to fight from Congress. Some of his staff worried it was a mistake. But Obama stood his ground, convinced that the American public was as weary of war as he was. If one were to look at your statements on Syria from the start, the red line, and then your decision at the very last minute not to
use military force. Wouldn't it be fair for critics to say this shows inconsistency, perhaps it shows your own ambivalence, and yet you have seen it as one of your best moments?
Well, ambivalence, absolutely, because it's hard. With respect to my red line, we in fact positioned our military to be able to strike Assad if he did not give up his chemical weapons.